order. My name's Terry Siemens, and I'm sitting in for Mayor Bruce Williams, who is testifying at the County Council this evening. Our city clerk is Jessie Carpenter. Ms. Carpenter, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mayor Williams, Councilmember Grimes,
Here.
Councilmember Mail.
Here.
Councilmember Siemens.
Present.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you. Tonight we have a special session to certify the election results from the special election we had for Ward 3. We have with us tonight Marilyn Abbott from the Board of Elections, who will present the information to us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. Am I live? That's okay. I'm pleased to present the results of the election that was held yesterday. I'm representing myself as a member of the Board of Elections and our other members who are listed, April Kissel, Paris Shaw, Jim Roberts, and Oliver Young. The 665 voters voted. That's approximately 28% of the registered voters in Ward 3. The included in this number, and we did have the breakout on this, Seth, are 7 newly registered 16 and 17-year-olds and 7 16 and 17-year-olds who had already been registered. We also had a 98-year-old voter come in who was voting in his first election in the United States, which I think is exciting. The numbers of the clerk registered a total of 23 voters during the course of the early voting and the day of the election. The 2 days of early voting were actually quite exciting. 250 voters did come through on those 2 days. We had people waiting in line both days to vote, and we had a steady stream of voters the entire time of those 2 sessions of voting. On Election Day, almost 400 people voted at the Tacoma Park Volunteer Fire Department training room. The training room was a very nice facility. The Volunteer Fire Department was a gracious host. No candidate, when we tallied the votes, received a majority of votes on the first ballot or first tally. Therefore, we did run an instant runoff. The results of the instant runoff was that Kate Stewart is elected as the council member for Ward 3. As usual, it's a pleasure to do elections and work with the city clerk and work with the city, and we're available for questions. There may be a tweak there may be a tweak of 1 vote on a couple of the totals. We did change the 1 day of the early voting to reflect it was 157 voters. There's another number that is altered a little bit. But there were 660 votes that were valid votes that were counted in the final result of the election. If there are any questions or any further information we can provide.
Okay. Does anyone on the council have a question? Mr. Mayo?
I have a couple of questions. So about 35% of people voted early. Do you remember ballpark what it was in 2011 or 13?
We've been asked a lot of questions about total number of registered voters, close votes, high turnouts, and we're planning, and Jessie, I know, was planning on looking at some of these numbers and providing it a little bit, maybe end of the week or later. I'm not quite sure, okay. But no, I don't.
Just an interesting policy question to think about as we get more and more early voters. What does that mean in terms of election services that we provide?
Gene Herman, who was one of the election judges, did work through with me, and we do have numbers which are interesting. Both days of the election separate. Both days of early voting separate. And on Election Day, we do have a cutoff at 3:30 p.m. So we know people who voted between 8 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. and then people who voted from 3:30 p.m. to I said that wrong, from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and then 3:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. I think I'm still tired. We just happen to have a law right around 3:30, and Gene was able to do this. I don't think that's something we could ever guarantee or always guarantee that we could do, but for this election, we would be able to.
Thanks. And my other, follow-up question was, just in terms of the instant runoff process, I know that there were, I remember from listening last night that there were some voters who didn't put a second choice on their ballots.
That's correct.
Do we have any way of counting, or do you typically count the sort of use of that ability on ballots? Do we know how many people put second choices, or no?
We would only get to it if there were an instant runoff. So in a regular election, we don't look for that. I mean, election on the first round, we don't look for it. And then on the instant runoff, of course, we only look at those votes that are going to be recounted.
And just the two anecdotes I heard were someone who put the same candidate for the first two or all three places, and then the other was someone who I think was thinking that it was like the choices were weighted, and so to put a different second choice than they would have otherwise preferred because they were thinking about weights on their first choice.
I'm not sure. I don't have a memory of looking at these really quickly, or a sense of how many only selected the first candidate or first choice. There were a number of those. Most of the ballots looked as though people understood the process. I mean, it was a first choice, second choice, third choice. I think we had one that we eliminated because the person selected all three candidates as a first choice. But I think people understood the process for the most part.
Thank you.
Mr. Grimes?
Thank you. I know it was a very long day, very long 3 days for you as city clerk, so thanks. I'm curious, I don't know if you can track it, have we had any registrations in Ward 3 for people who received voter registration forms as part of a packet given to new renters? And if you are able to track that at all, no, I guess not. We haven't had any. Would you know if we had?
I wouldn't know, because unless they were Tacoma Park only voters, that voter registration form would likely be sent right to the county.
Yeah, okay. The next question, I'll say it, would have been, some way of measuring the effectiveness of handing out voter registration materials to new tenants. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I would just like to, again, thank the city clerk and the Board of Elections. I know you had a very long day yesterday. I was able to come and watch kind of the tail end of your process, and it was an exciting vote count. It was nice to see the use of the instant runoff voting, and I was impressed with the excellent job everyone did, and I thank you for your dedication. I also like to thank the candidates. Jeffrey Nussbaum's with us tonight, and also Roger Schlegel for stepping forward and running good campaigns. Really appreciate that, and congratulations to Kate Stewart for her successful bid for the Ward 3 seat, and look forward to your joining us here Monday night.
Tomorrow night.
Oh, tomorrow night. See that? That's why I don't hold the seat very long.
Except she's not sworn in yet.
Well, Bruce indicated that he'd be willing to have her seated up here.
Just
there's no reason
there's
not
no
to.
vote tomorrow night, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's all, unless there's anyone in the group that would like to make a comment. Please step to the podium. And thank you, Ms. Abbott.
My buddy Daniel's 19 Sherman Avenue, and I also would very much like to thank the three candidates for running, and thank the Board of Elections for the outstanding job they did during this election, no question. Thank you for letting me sit in on your meeting at the firehouse, too. So again, thank you to the candidates, and thank you to the Board of Elections. You did a fabulous job. And voting at the firehouse was very special because for years my family fought to keep the firehouse here back in the 80s and early 90s, and then we fought for a new firehouse for over 15 to 20 years. So voting, and that's where I remember voting, and I'm that old, I remember voting in the firehouse my first time, I guess I want to say 69 or 71, before this was built. So it was a very special time for me. And, you know, thank you again, and thank the council, too, very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? If not, meeting's adjourned.